AFR Talk. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point Network AFR Talk. Number to call, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. I want to start this segment by playing a couple of sound bites from a piece I stumbled across on Huffington Post. They have a television network, Huffington Post Live. It's sponsored by AOL. It's on the AOL.com website. And they got on to my theory that President Obama had been photoshopped into that Situation Room photo when the bin Laden raid was going down. I got two clips from that. Here is clip one. Let's listen.
We've all seen the famous Situation Room photo of the successful bin Laden raid. It's now cemented as a piece of history, of course. But conservative radio host Brian Fisher has decided that President Obama was probably photoshopped into the famous Situation Room photo. Let's take a look.
President Obama sitting at the corner of the table, kind of all hunched over. In fact, I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I said it at the time. I believe if you go look at that picture, I think the odds are good that he was photoshopped into that picture. You look at it, you look at the size of his head. I mean, I encourage you to go look at that picture. Look at the size of his head compared to the size of the head of everybody else in the room. Even people standing in the back of the room, their heads are bigger than his head. And it looks teeny tiny next to the people that he's sitting next to. He looks kind of hunched over and small. I think that got photoshopped in after the deal. I think that Obama's approach to that thing was, hey, if this thing goes south, I don't want to be in the room. I don't want to be anywhere near this thing if it blows up.
So implored by one Mr. Brian Fisher. Arthur, let's go look at the photo and look at Obama's head. Look at his head. Oh, wait. His head looks about the same size as everyone else's.
Hardly. All right, here is clip number two. It's a sad moment for me, ladies and gentlemen. It's a sad moment. You listen to this soundbite. I am referred to by somebody at the Huffington Post, AOL.com, as Brian Schweitzer. They have no idea who I am. Let's listen.
There's not much else to say about it. Although I guess we could explain that the reason this new conspiracy theory has popped up is that Reggie Love, the former personal assistant to the president, has said that on that day, Obama said he didn't want to be in the room for the entirety of this mission because of the stress, and that he and Reggie Love played cards or something, which does not, imply that he was not in the room at all. But that's the leaping point for Brian Schweitzer's little stand-up routine.
And we've got the picture up on the screen. For those of you watching on audio and video streaming, we've got the picture of the Situation Room with me in there next to President Obama, replacing Joe Biden briefly at a critical moment in the deliberations in the crisis. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. Understand also that someone who follows me on Twitter was watching a replay of Red Eye. That's a Fox News program, airs in the middle of the night. Greg Gutfield is the anchor of that. And apparently they got on to my theory about the photoshopping and spent at least part of one segment talking about that. We haven't been able to track that down, but there it is. Let's go to Rose, Lakeland, Florida. Rose, welcome to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. What's on your mind?
I would like to say that I think Chris Christie, governor of New Jersey, has just single-handedly destroyed the Republican Party with signing that law that forbids children who don't want to be homosexuals, their parents, counselors. That's forbidden now. And unless the Republican Party immediately makes known their displeasure with Chris Christie, they're toast.
Well, I appreciate the call, Rose, and maybe that's a good question to have our listeners weigh in on. Rose suggesting, look, Chris Christie is doing a lot of damage here to the Republican Party because he's saying that people are born that way. He's saying that homosexuality is not a sin. He, as a Republican, is signing a law that prohibits teens from getting help with unwanted same-sex attractions, prevents their parents from getting professional help for their teens, and prevents counselors from doing their job. So what do you think? How does this impact your feelings about Chris Christie for 2016, for instance? And do you share Rose's concerns about what Chris Christie's decision today to sign this bill, the impact it could have on the Republican Party, because he is a very prominent figure in Republican Party circles these days, and he's almost certainly running for president in 2016, planning on it, and he wants to win the Republican nomination. I know Rush Limbaugh, for instance, has suggested he's going to wind up being the Democratic president. He leans that far to the left that he might be able to win the nomination in the Democratic Party. Then there's a lot of signals out there on the left that people aren't real happy with Hillary Clinton. I mean, you got the New York Times out there running that huge expose of the Clinton Foundation. You got people now, we got some sound bites, people raising questions about Hillary Clinton jumping into the fray so soon. In fact, let's grab those while we're at it. Let's go down to clip number 6, if we can, Rob, the Robert Gibbs clip. By the way, I got a text from Deb after that Huffington Post where I'm referred to as Brian Schweitzer. She says, man, I am in trouble because I have no idea now how to spell our last name. So we've got to get that all worked out. So anyway, here is Robert Gibbs. And here's Robert Gibbs. This guy was a Clinton advisor. He was a spokesman for Obama. And here he is. He's raising questions about what Hillary Clinton is doing. Let's listen.
If her campaign becomes an extension really of either her husband's term or the current president's term, it's not necessarily a good deal for her. I completely agree with Chuck. I, as a strategist, am fairly floored that she has decided to enter the public fray so quickly. She could do the foundation work. She could do issue work. She could build a campaign. She could develop a message without having to be so far out front of there. And you know, Chuck talks about strong bipartisan approval ratings. Those will whittle quite quickly as she steps further and further.
So that's Robert Gibbs. I mean, he raises questions. He's floored that she's entered the fray so early, way too soon. Her approval numbers are going to plummet, says Robert Gibbs. Here's Chuck Todd, clip number 7. And he's bemoaning the fact, I mean, he is enamored of Obama. He's part of the Obama cult, and he's concerned about what Hillary's early entry into the fray are going to have on his beloved Messiah. Let's listen.
David, there's one other unintended consequence here, and I don't think she's intending. The more there is sort of this split inside the Democratic Party of who's the leader of the Democratic Party right now, who's the future of the Democratic Party, and the more she talks out there, the more you start seeing a gravitational pull back toward Hillary. This hurts the current president of the United States as trying to be leader of the Democratic Party, as trying to move the party as he gets ready for a bunch of fall fights. Lame duck status happens in 2 phases, right? The first phase is lame duck status in Washington between the presidency and the White House. And then there's a second phase of lame duck status inside your own party. Her coming out early, I think, speeds up that lame duck process of Barack Obama inside the Democratic Party. And that's something, if I'm sitting in the White House, I don't like so much.
So that's Chuck Todd saying, look, Hillary is hurting Barack Obama, and we can't be having that. He's too important to the future of the world. We've got to have the planet continue to heal. The seas have to continue to slow their rise, and we need President Obama out there doing his magic mojo, and Hillary Clinton is just gumming things up by jumping into the race so early. So you don't have a universal adoration society out there on the left for Hillary Clinton. Then back to Chris Christie, and I'd love your take on this. We'll take calls into the next hour, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. What you think about Hillary Clinton kind of jumping into the deal so early, and the fact that liberals are, I think, showing some kind of skepticism about her. New York Times expose on the Clinton Foundation. Chuck Todd saying Hillary's out there hurting Barack Obama. Robert Gibbs out there saying he's floored that she's making such a big scene so early in the game. Your reactions to all of that, Hillary in 2016, and your reactions to Chris Christie as a Republican governor coming out with such a strong statement in support of the practice of sodomy among teenagers. That's really what Chris Christie has done. He's supporting that behavior, supporting that conduct, is going to get in the way of anybody that tries to help a teenager stop that kind of behavior. 888-589-8840. Let's grab a call from Max in Troy, Alabama. Max, welcome. What's on your mind?
Yeah, my call is in reference to, I was just listening to you talk about homosexuality should be illegal in comparison to the war on drugs.
Yes,
I have to say I strongly disagree. I'm a heterosexual myself. Let me go ahead and say that up front. But the reason why there is a a war on drugs is because of all the underground crime that is associated with it. They're not worried about people sitting in their rooms and getting high. They're worried about drug cartels and untaxable income, running around rampant. To say that homosexuality should be illegal in the same sense is asinine, in my opinion. These people, they're not hurting anybody. It doesn't affect you. It doesn't affect me.
But wait a second, Max. Let's kind of unpack your logic here. Can you hold on after the news break? Do you have that much time?
Absolutely. I got all the time in the world.
Let's start now. And if you can hold over the news break, I'd like to kind of continue this conversation. But let's start here, Max. So I take it you're in favor of sort of legalizing drugs and getting rid of the war on drugs.
I think the war on drugs is a failure. I think prohibition does not work.
Okay, so let me ask you this question.
I myself am not a drug user.
So let me ask you this question, Max. Why did laws against drug use start in the first place?
The laws against drug use.
Why do we even have them?
It was mainly profiteering.
Is mainly what?
If you dig far enough and dig deep enough, you're going to find out it was profiteering.
Profiteering.
Yes.
I don't understand that. They made laws against drug use because the lawmakers wanted to keep the money themselves?
Because of the untaxable money that is associated with the drugs running around. There's people that are doing this, behind the curtains. They have
okay,
no...
but so you're saying that was the only motive. It didn't have anything to do with the impact of drugs on human health, the impact of drugs on teenagers, the impact of drugs on
I think that's
communities.
What they tell you, but no, I don't believe that to be true.
So you don't think any single part of the laws against drug use had to do with human health? None of it?
Honestly, no. I don't think that it really does.
Okay, well, that limits the productivity of our conversation. Then I'll go ahead and let you go, Max, because if the motivation for laws against drug use, which is, I believe, was to protect human health primarily, if that's the motivation for having a law against drug use, then that's the same thinking that ought to apply to what we do with homosexual behavior. Back after 5.